What if everything you believe about your own history is just a very old, very successful PR campaign?
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Haanaan Wins. Honestly, Seb, I'm feeling a little too much like that today, just a bit raw and exposed. We've had so much wind lately. I feel like I've been physically scrubbed clean.
Well, you're looking bright, even if I am dialing in from the home studio today. A bit more quiet on my end than usual.
It's definitely a bit too quiet. I'm missing the chaos of the others. Paco is actually out today. He's currently in a heated debate with a local community organizer about whether capybaras should be officially recognized as parliamentary observers, given how much they keep their chill during legislative sessions.
And Jane is currently unavailable because she's refusing to leave her house until she can prove the recent news about the Parmigiano Reggiano heatwave isn't a deep state conspiracy to devalue Italian exports. She's deep in the spreadsheets.
She'll come around. Once the pressure stabilizes, she'll be back to her usual skeptical self.
Speaking of things being manipulated, it's funny how we're so obsessed with deepfakes and digital misinformation today, yet we rarely look at the original blueprint for how an identity is manufactured.
You're leading into it, aren't you?
I am. Today we're looking at Antoine Favre's The Eternal Hermes. We're looking at a rebranding project, how a simple Greek messenger god was systematically morphed into a mythic Alicia Mickle mastermind. Let's get into the metamorphosis. Okay, so I've got the text in front of me. We're looking at the very beginning of Favre's anthology, the preface and the first chapter. And Emily, I have to say, even the disclaimer at the top feels heavy. It's this unofficial, free digital edition translated by the underground occult store.
I love that. It makes it feel like we're reading something we're not supposed to have. Like we're eavesdropping on a secret library.
Right? But then we hit the meat of it. The title, The Eternal Hermes, from Greek god to alchemical magus. And the first thing Favre does is set the stage with this beautiful, almost cinematic imagery. He describes the Greek Hermes slipping into a cave at dawn like light through a crack.
It's so visceral, and he uses words like plastic, mobile, and ambiguous.
Exactly, and that's the key. Before he becomes this heavy, stone-carved sage, he is movement. He's the god of the in-between. He's the messenger who doesn't just follow a map, but follows winding paths where accidents happen.
Wait, I love that part. He says his route isn't the shortest distance between 2 points. It's the wandering itself. It's not about the destination, it's about the unexpected encounter.
It's almost the opposite of how we live now, right? Everything is GPS and optimization. But Hermes? Hermes thrives on the unforeseen. He's the god of Hermii unplanned good luck.
But there's a darker side to that mobility, isn't there? He's a thief, not a traveler.
He is, and this is a crucial distinction Favre makes, he's not like Prometheus. Prometheus steals fire to change the world, but Hermes, he steals to keep things circulating. He steals things only to put them back into the flow.
So he's a cosmic recycler?
In a way, he's a psychopomp. He moves souls between the living and the dead. He's a delivery guy, ensuring the energy of the universe doesn't get stuck in one place.
So he's the middleman. But then, how does this thieving messenger turn into the thrice greatest sage? Because that sounds way more stationary. Way more, I have all the answers written in a book.
That's exactly where the deepfake element comes in. This is the part that tripped me up. Favre explains that this transition happened through two main things, euhemerism and the fascination with Egypt.
Euphemerism? That sounds like a medical condition.
It's actually a historical theory. It's the idea that gods were originally just very impressive humans, people who did extraordinary things, and after they died, everyone just rebranded them as deities.
So it's a historical PR campaign. He invented the lyre. He's a god now.
Precisely, and then you add the Egyptian layer. The Greeks look at Egypt, see Thoth, this ancient, powerful figure with hieroglyphs and deep wisdom, and they go, hey, that looks a lot like our Hermes. This is identity theft. They took the Greek messenger, merged him with the Egyptian Thoth, and suddenly, he wasn't a trickster god anymore, he was Hermes Trismegistus, the architect of all sacred knowledge.
That is such a wild rebrand. It's like taking a local street performer and, through a series of clever social media posts, convincing the world he's an ancient philosopher king.
And it works. The text says this double movement, where humans become gods through fame, and gods become humans through history, is what creates this incredibly fluid, unstable identity.
It's no wonder the genealogies are a mess. I was looking at the list he mentions. He has all these different fathers, different lineages. One version says he's the son of the sky, another says he's the son of Nile.
It's total chaos. But that's the point. The true Hermes isn't a single person or a single myth. He's the intersection of all these moving parts. He's the bridge.
It makes me wonder if our most sacred traditions are built on these layers of rebranding and clever interpretation. What else are we misremembering?
That, my friend, is exactly what we're here to find out. Okay, so we've established the rebrand, but now Favre starts listing the sheer scale of the resume. He isn't just a messenger. He's being credited with being the first legislator. He's up there with Moses and Solon.
Moses? Wait, we're putting a Greek messenger god in the same breath as the guy who received the Ten Commandments? That is a massive leap.
It's a full-on collision of worlds. He says Mercury is credited with giving the Egyptians their laws, teaching philosophy to priests. He's even called the founder of Egyptian religion by some.
So the deepfake wasn't just about changing his personality. It was about hijacking the entire foundation of civilization. If you can claim you invented law, astronomy, and even the alphabet, you don't just have a following, you have a monopoly on truth.
Exactly. And it gets even more wild. He mentions this Arabic text, the Picatrix from the 10th century. It claims Hermes built statues to control the flow of the Nile using the movement of the moon.
Okay, now we're moving from historical sage into full-on supervillain engineer. That sounds less like a philosopher and more like a cosmic architect playing with the environment.
Right, but look how the text connects this to the Islamic tradition. He talks about Idris. This is a huge pivot. He says, while his name isn't in the Quran, historians identified him with Idris the prophet whom God exalted to a high station.
So the rebranding moves from Greek to Egyptian, then to Arabic, then into the Quranic tradition. It's like a virus that just keeps finding new hosts.
And it's more than a name change. It's a functional expansion. He says there are 3 Hermeses. The first is the civilizer who carved sacred science into hieroglyphs. The second, in Babylon, was the precursor to Pythagoras. And the third, he was the first teacher of alchemy.
Wait, the third one is the alchemist? So the magical version of him is actually the latest iteration?
Precisely. He's growing. He's accumulating layers. And it's not just in the East either. He brings it back to the West, to the Latin world. He mentions this idea that the Holy Grail might actually come from the cup of Hermes.
You see, even the most romantic, knightly legends of the Middle Ages might just be a highly stylized, medievalized version of an ancient Greek cup. It's all one continuous stream of reinterpretation.
But here's where the tension really spikes. This is the part that always makes me a bit uneasy when I read it. The identity becomes so fragmented that the church starts, they start fighting back.
I saw that. The text says he was judged, ridiculed, and turned into a devil.
Yeah, it's a complete 180. On one hand, he's the Logos, the representative of Christ, the good shepherd carrying a lamb. But on the other hand, he's being depicted as a demonic figure, a thief, a liar. Even the author says Satan loves to take the form of Mercury.
That is such a heavy psychological split. It's like the archetype has a fractured psyche. One moment he's the divine messenger of truth, and the next he's a literal demon in a disguise.
And the imagery gets messy. He describes these medieval illustrations where Mercury has a dog's head because of Anubis, or where his wings are so huge they cover his entire body like a cloak, or even worse, where his caduceus his sacred staff is replaced by a 2-lamp candelabrum.
Someone was definitely not paying attention in art class.
No, but it's serious. It shows how the signal is getting lost in the noise. The original symbol is being distorted by every artist's misunderstanding or every priest's agenda.
It's lossy compression. You keep passing the file around, and by the time it reaches the 13th century, the image is totally pixelated.
But then, just when you think the identity is completely broken, the Renaissance arrives, and it pulls him back. He's no longer just a demon or a saint. He becomes the interpreter of the mind, the very genius of human eloquence.
So the deepfake goes from a way to hide the truth to a way to express the highest human potential.
Exactly. He ends up as the bridge that connects the pagan past to the intellectual future. He's the third given, the middle ground where everything meets. Okay, so we've talked about the rebrand, but now Favre starts dropping the actual evidence. We're looking at the 14th and 15th centuries, and the text gets really specific about Boccaccio. He has this book, Digiminatio Deorum, and Favre calls it the best example of the border between medieval and Renaissance myth.
And he's looking for the hidden layers in his stories. He uses this phrase sub cordis, under the bark or under the shell.
Exactly. The idea is that every poem or story has a hidden meaning underneath the surface. And Boccaccio is obsessed with this idea of identity through attributes. He basically says you can identify the planet Mercury by looking at its flexible nature.
And he gives us a list. He says Mercury is essentially 5 different things at once: the planet, the physician, the orator, the merchant, and the thief.
The thief. It's hard to escape that original Greek trickster energy, isn't it? Even in a scholarly Renaissance text, you can't scrub the larceny off him.
But then it gets even more crowded. He brings in Petrarch, then even earlier writers like Pierre Berzuier, where Mercury is the patron of eloquence, but, and this is the kicker also, the patron of false ideologues.
So even in the 1300s, they were worried about fake news.
Total classic. But look at how the deepfake expands here. He says that up until the 12th century, astrology in the West was pretty limited, just a few old commentaries. Then, massive waves of Arabic texts get translated into Latin.
And suddenly, the floodgates open. This isn't just a trickle of info, it's a surge of popularity. Calendars, almanacs, prognostications, everything is suddenly filled with planetary imagery.
And Mercury is right at the center of this surge. He mentions these 2 crazy types of imagery. One is Melothia, where the zodiac signs are literally mapped onto the human body.
And the second one is even more cinematic. He calls them the children of the planets. You see these images of a deity, like Mercury, in a chariot hovering over a group of figures that are his children.
And these children aren't literal kids. They are personifications of human qualities. Musicians, magicians, scribes, merchants, basically anyone whose life is unstable or inconstant.
It's a perfect visual metaphor for the god himself. He's presiding over the flow, the movement, the very people who live in the in-between.
It's like he's the CEO of the gig economy.
Exactly. If you're a freelance scribe or wandering merchant, Mercury is your patron. And this imagery stays incredibly consistent. He mentions the Mantegna Tarot from around 1460. It's a ladder of meditations.
I love the description of this Mercury. He's got the triangular hat, the boots, the flute, and the caduceus that the snakes on the staff are replaced by little winged dragons. And he's standing over the headless head of Argus.
It's this incredible synthesis. It's the ancient Greek Hermes, mixed with the medieval version, all updated for a Renaissance artist. It's not a new creation, it's a remix.
It's like a collage, and it spreads everywhere from Italian frescoes to German houses. Even Albrecht Dürer is picking up these motifs.
But we have to look at the most beautiful version of this. Favre points us to Botticelli's Primavera.
Oh, that painting is everything.
It's stunning. He describes Hermes here as the leader of the Graces. He's using his magic wand to command the winds and the clouds, flying through them like a bird. But, and this is what I love, he looks melancholy.
Yes, he's the god of eloquence, but also the god of silence and meditation. He's the intellect that uses reason to reach for heavenly things.
And Favre makes this profound connection. He says the painting embodies the whole Hermetic process, emanatio, conversio, remitio, the flow of energy, from the breath of passion, the wind to the turning of the dance, and finally the return to the heavens in the image of Mercury.
It's the cycle of the soul, the wind comes down, the dance happens, and the spirit ascends.
But it's not all beautiful meditations and Renaissance art. We have to go back to the darker side. The text reminds us that Mercury is also in the miseries. He's a character in plays where he's a servant to a king, or even a demon.
The legend of Emperor Julian.
Right? The story where Julian's mother-in-law finds a statue of Mercury in the Tiber, the emperor sells his soul to this creature and becomes an apostate.
So we're back to the unstable identity. One moment he's a high priest of humanism, and the next he's the literal demon that gave an emperor his power.
It's the tension of the figure. He is the bridge, but a bridge can be crossed by a saint or a devil. He is the very definition of the in-between. That tension between the divine and the demonic, it's getting quite heavy. Let's take a quick breather before we dive into the darker stuff.
I agree. My brain needs a moment to settle that transition.
we're back. All right, we're back. I'm calling in from the home studio today. A bit of a change, but the light is perfect for some heavy lifting.
We'll forgive the lack of studio atmosphere, as the brain power is there. I'm ready.
Good, because we are diving straight into the deep end of Fyvre. We've been talking about this idea of rebranding, how a simple Greek messenger gets a massive, mythic makeover. And look, right at the much start of this section, he's looking at Boccaccio. He says Hermes has this clarity and flexibility.
Like he's a shape-shot, a god, but a concept that can stretch.
Exactly. And then he brings in John the Mayor, who calls him fantastic and exciting, but also, and this is where it gets spooky, indifferent. He's good to the good and bad to the bad. It's a neutral cosmic force.
That's a terrifying kind of neutrality. But wait, Seth, look at what he says about Giordano Bruno. He says Bruno literally identifies himself with Mercury.
He does. He sees himself as the messenger sent to restore the truth that was corrupted. It's like he's claiming to be the cosmic undo button for a corrupted reality.
Which leads us into this wild imagery with Jephratori. He's talking about the myth of Io, the one where Juno turns her into a cow and Mercury comes to save her by decapitating the giant Argus.
It's not exactly a peaceful rescue mission.
No, but look at how Tori reinterprets the violence. He says the act of cutting off the head of Argus is actually a metaphor for a scholar cutting through barism and intellectual night to find true science.
See, that's the deep fake in action. He takes a bloody mythological execution and rebrands it as the nobility of learning. He's turning a decapitation into a library opening.
That is so cynical and yet so perfectly Renaissance. It's all about the power of the narrative.
It's even more literal with Rabelais. He's writing about this character, Panurge, and the way he describes Panurge. Emily, he's basically a literary version of Hermes.
He's the trickster?
He's everything. He uses linguistic skill, he manipulates boundaries, he's got the wand to open any door or chest. But the author gets really specific here. He says Panurge's medical healing is actually a parody of a magic spell. He uses a pomade of resurrection.
A pomade? That's a bit much, even for a magic trick.
Right? But it gets weirder. He says Panurge is like the anti-impotent god. He uses this rather explicit connection to the trismegistic power of his own anatomy to heal people.
Oh god. So the 3 times great title isn't just for the sage anymore. It's been applied to a certain part of the character?
Exactly. He's calling his own, his Guelpho, as the text says, trismegistic. He's even calling his beer bottle the 3 times great bottle. He's taking this massive, sacred, cosmic title and dragging it through the mud of a tavern.
It's such a reverence, but it's more than jokes. The text shifts. We move from the parody of Panurge to the actual massive historical pivot, the rediscovery of the corpus hermeticum.
This is the moment the deepfake becomes a found reality. The 1460s. A monk brings these texts from Macedonia to Florence. Suddenly, everyone is convinced there's this ancient theology, Prisca Theologia, a hidden chain of wisdom connecting Moses, Hermes, and Plato.
It's like they found a lost hard drive of human history and decided to rewrite the entire operating system based on what was on it.
And that's where the danger creeps in. Favre points out that this tradition is built on a beautiful lie. They were so obsessed with how old the wisdom was that they didn't care if it was actually ancient. They wanted the authority of antiquity.
And then, the bombshell, 1614. Isaac Casaubon shows up and basically says, hey, these texts, they aren't ancient. They're from the 2nd or 3rd century.
The deepfake is exposed. The ancient source is actually much, much younger than anyone thought.
So the whole foundation of this eternal wisdom was a much more recent construction.
Precisely. The myth was more important than the chronology. They didn't need the texts to be old, they just needed the idea of them to be primordial. They were building a new identity out of the fragments of the old one. Alright, let's pick up the thread here. We just left that moment of crisis, the exposure of the ancient texts, as much younger than believed. But Favre doesn't stop there. He shows how this tension between heaven and earth actually feeds into a new kind of imagery in the 17th century.
Right. It's like when you know something is fake, but you decide to use the aesthetic anyway because it worked so well for your brand. He mentions Ben Jonson and Milton, They aren't even trying to hide the Mercury connection anymore. They're using him to talk about politics, about kings and visionaries.
Yeah, but look at what happens to his actual presence. This part really struck me. He says that while all these poets are writing about him, in visual art, Mercury starts to drown in academicism. The vibrant, breeding god from the Renaissance gets stuck in a classical museum setting. He becomes a mere figure among other figures. It loses its punch.
That makes sense. Once everything is standardized and put behind glass, the magic leaks out. You lose that wild life we were talking about earlier with Rabelais or Torrey. Everything becomes very polite and decorous.
Exactly, like an ornament rather than a force. But and here's the big but, Favor notes that this vitality didn't die, it just moved underground into esotericism, alchemy, Neoplatonism, Rosicrucian-style vibes, specifically in Germany.
Oh, I love when he talks about Germany. There's always something so intense happening there.
Always. And check this out, because they were looking for roots, they started making some truly wild claims. He mentions this guy, Kriegman, in 1684, who tries to use philology to prove Hermes was actually the founder of the Germanic peoples, linking Egyptian Thoth directly to the Teutons.
Wait, what? So they weren't just interpreting myths anymore, they were literally trying to rewrite ethnic origins using Mercury as the bridge?
Precisely. It's a rebranding strategy. If you can claim your ancestors were descended from a god of wisdom, suddenly your culture has instant prestige. Even people like Bosch writing to Leibniz are seeing these patterns everywhere, finding traces of Hermes even in ancient Chinese texts like the I Ching.
That is insane. They were essentially claiming that all human civilization follows one single Mercury blueprint, and if we find it in China or Egypt, it doesn't matter how different the language is, it's all part of the same cosmic software update.
Exactly. The idea that they were just different names for the same ideas. But then, look at where he takes us next with alchemy. This isn't academic art. This is gritty, functional imagery. In German alchemical books, Mercury is right at home. He's not an ornament, he's the agent of change.
Because he's doing the actual work. I love that phrase, the master of reconciling opposites. He isn't sitting there looking pretty on a pedestal. He's actually performing the chemical marriage.
Right, he's the bridge between poles. And Favre gets really specific here about his role as a psychopompic conductor of souls. It's tied directly to the chemistry itself, the dissolving and the coagulating. Even when they use very heavy-handed metaphors, like him killing Argus by dropping a stone on him, they see it as a symbol of the material being fixed into something permanent.
It's so visceral. It goes from these high-minded philosophical debates back down to the heat of the furnace. Though, I do feel bad for all those other figures we lost along the even because they didn't fit this one specific pattern.
You hit on exactly what Favre is worried about at the end. We get caught up in searching for certain signals, like power or mediation, that we start ignoring everything else, like Mercury masquerading as a bishop or starting a whole race. If it doesn't fit our definition of messenger, we stop seeing it.
So even while we are celebrating the expansion of the myth, we might be accidentally shrinking it?
That's the paradox. The more we try to define where Hermes truly lives, the more we risk losing the parts of him that don't follow our rules. Okay, so we've established the deep fake nature of the texts, but I want to pivot to how Favre describes the utility of the myth. He's saying that even if you look at Hermes as a god, or as a historical human sage the Euhemerist, view the two methods aren't mutually exclusive. They actually complete each other.
Right. It's like saying a character in a movie can be a literal person in the plot, but also a metaphor for the hero's journey. The truth is in both layers.
Exactly, and he brings in this beautiful, almost linguistic idea from de Grébillon. He suggests that Mercury can be read through Celtic roots as sign and man a signpost. He's someone who helps us interpret history and our even lives by providing symbolic landmarks.
I love that. Not a fixed destination, just a way to navigate. But then he gets intense. He quotes William Dote saying, Hermes deifies transition. He's the god of the in-between. He challenges any simple division between genders, between this world and the next.
He's a disruptor. He says Hermes deifies transition and that he's always in a state of anticipation of the future. He's never static. He's even described as someone who might steal the substance of what he touches, only to regenerate it through circulation.
So he's a cosmic thief, but he's stealing it just to fix it? That sounds like a very messy way to run a universe.
It's a messy, vital universe. And that leads us into chapter 2, where Favor starts defining what Hermeticism actually is as a mindset. He says it's characterized by this greedy curiosity and eclecticism that's willing to feed on any tradition.
Like a spiritual buffet.
Precisely. It's not about a neat, organized doctrine. It's a melting pot, and it's driven by will. He mentions how in the Corpus Hermeticum, God's very essence is desire or will. And if God acts through will, then we, as humans, must use our will to reach him.
Which brings us back to that tension we talked about earlier, the split between the optimist and the pessimist.
Yeah, he lays it out so clearly. You have Gnostic optimism, the belief that the universe is divine, and by contemplating it, we can become godlike. We absorb the universe into our minds.
And then the Nanoptic pessimism, the idea that the world is a fallen, broken place, a result of sin or catastrophe.
But, and this is the key, Favor 8 argues that in true Hermeticism, these aren't contradictions. They are complementary ways of seeing. One person's broken world is another person's divine classroom. Both views agree on one thing. Humans have the power to restore what was lost.
It's actually quite empowering. Instead of the world is bad, so give up, it's the world is broken, so let's use our intellect and will to fix it.
And he ties it to this incredible image of the mirror. The idea that we can achieve Gnostic experience by reflecting the universe in our own spirit. We catch the divine essence in the material world and imprint it onto our psyche.
Like a cosmic photography session.
Exactly. He mentions how this moves from simple mirrors to the complex ideas of light, prisms, and colors in thinkers like Jacob Boumoy. It's all about decoding the universe like a text.
So the universe is a book, and we are the readers.
And the subject matter is the particular. Unlike Aristotle, who wanted the big abstract rules, the Hermeticist wants the specific details, the relationship between a specific planet, a specific metal, and a specific plant. It's a philosophy of embodiment.
I love that. The nightmare of the Enlightenment was pure abstraction. The Hermeticist wants the weight, the texture, the actual stuff of the world.
He says the whole point is that through precise means, like initiations, we can restore our divine essence. We aren't just waiting for a rescue. We are the agents of the rescue. We use our intellect to help nature itself improve.
It sounds like a heavy responsibility.
It is. It's the idea that Adam's fall dragged nature down with him, and now, through us, nature can rise again. It's almost an early form of metaphysical ecology.
But wait, Seth, if the deepfake was exposed in 1614 and the word Hermeticism started to get a bad reputation, how did all this will and embodiment survive?
That's the mystery. He points to Germany. He says while the Italians and French were doing the highbrow humanist stuff, the Germans were developing this barbaric, autonomous version. They weren't even using the Corpus Hermeticum as much. They were building this intense, practical, almost wild alchemy and nature philosophy, all on their own.
So they were building the house without even looking at the original blueprints?
Exactly. They were just building. And it was much more visceral, much more about the power of the particular. They were looking at the real raw world and finding the divine in the cracks.
That's a lot of history to digest in one go. My brain needs a quick stretch.
Agreed. Let's take 5 and grab some water. All right, we're back. All right, we're back. I've got the lights dimmed a bit, just me and the notes here at home today.
It's good to have you in your element, Seth. The studio feels a little quiet without the usual bustle, but there's a nice focus to it.
Thanks. I needed it. I was actually looking at some old notes from our game of Munchkin the other night, trying to figure out how Paco managed that specific trick with the dragon, and it drifted me right back into this text. We're looking at 5A again, specifically this heavy section on the death and rebirth of the Hermetic myth.
Oh boy. We're getting into the heavy hitters now. The 18th century.
Yeah. And it's bleak, honestly. He starts by describing this slow fading. He mentions these scholars in the 1700s, names like Celerarius and how they only gave Hermes vulnerable definitions. It's like the signal was being lost in the noise.
It's like a digital file corrupting over time.
Exactly. He says by 1750, this massive wave of sensualism and materialism basically forced everyone to forget about divine love and reason. The myth didn't just die, it was actively pushed out of the room.
But then, the 19th century hits. The Romantics show up.
They always show up to stir the pot. He talks about this true rebirth through Romanticism, bringing back these cosmic harmonies, these musical harmonies of the universe. It's beautiful, but he pivots to something much more modern and, frankly, much more dangerous.
The three dangers.
Right. And this is where I want us to look closely. He says the first danger is historical inaccuracies. People just making stuff up or publishing bad reprints without any context. But the second one, this one really stung me when I read it.
Let me guess. The aliens crowd?
Exactly. He calls it ephemerism. He specifically calls out writers like Erich von Däniken. He says these people try to de-occult the occult by stripping the myth of all its meaning and saying, oh, those weren't gods. Those were just ancient astronauts in chariots.
Wait, that is such a massive reframe. You're saying that by trying to make the myth rational or scientific, they actually kill the very thing that makes it real?
Precisely. He says it's a betrayal of historical reality. When you turn a god into an alien, you aren't explaining the myth. You're just deleting the soul of the story. You're turning a sacred symbol into a mere historical event.
That is so much like how we treat psychology today, isn't it? He mentions the third danger, the confusion of initiatic symbolism with symbol therapy.
Yeah, he's being quite critical here. He's looking at places like California, seeing all these groups calling themselves gay and Gnostics, and he's asking, is this a genuine spiritual movement, or is it just people seeking individual and collective therapy?
That's a heavy question. Is it a spiritual rebirth, or just a psychological coping mechanism?
He's worried it's becoming too much of a latter. He says the mass media produces this pseudo-initiatic discourse that is fragmented and more fantastic than actually transformative.
But, and there's always a but with Fabre, he doesn't just leave us in the dark. He brings in Jung.
He credits Jung for finding a way to bridge that gap. He says Jung saw the necessity for humanity to live with myth. He wasn't just doing therapy, he was practicing what the author calls radio hermetica.
Radio hermetica? That sounds like a way of reading the world rather than analyzing it.
Yes, he says this is a hermetic reading that finds depth. He even quotes Baudelaire's sense colors and sounds respond to each other. It's about seeing the connections, the correspondences. He's arguing against the reductionism of Marx or Freud. He doesn't want you to just find the hidden symptom. He wants you to find the living place.
So it's not about debunking the symbol to find a truth underneath. It's about the symbol being the truth?
Exactly. He ends this section by saying the role of modern Hermeticism should be demystification and remythification, not creating fake myths, but refusing to let the official ideology strip the magic away from the cosmos.
Man, I need to go sit in some sun for a bit. That was intense.
I'll go grab my jaw harp. Maybe we can find some of those cosmic harmonies in the garden. Okay, I think I found the heart of it. We were just talking about the danger of things becoming too abstract, too flat, and then he drops this poem by Charles Péguy.
Oh, I love when the text gets poetic. It breathes.
It does. He uses it to show how Hermeticism tries to bridge that gap to connect fist and flame. He says the supernatural itself is corporeal.
The tree of grace and the tree of nature, intertwined like two heavy vines. That's such a striking image. He's saying they are physically bound together as a metaphor.
Exactly. And he uses this to ask a massive question. Is this intertwining actually a way to summon the caduceus, to find that perfect middle ground?
Because he lists so many opposites, doesn't he? He's like, he is the mediator between body and spirit, heaven and earth, God and the world.
Passion and reason, ego and id, eros and thanatos, anima and animus. He's pulling from everywhere. It's like he's trying to map every tension in the human psyche onto the figure of Mercury.
It's almost overwhelming. But there's a purpose to it, right? He says the Hermeticists weren't just looking for ghosts. They were looking for the insights of the earth to find the divine within it.
Yeah, and he makes this really bold claim. He says if they see the body as a magical object linked to the planets, it's because they find meaning in everything. They're trying to overcome the illusion of banality.
The illusion of banality. I need to write that one down. That's a mood.
Right? But he follows that with a warning. He says this path is more poetic than ascetic. He's saying that while asceticism, the whole denying the body thing, drives scientific progress, it's not the only way to experience the totality of life.
Which brings us back to what we were saying about the danger of losing the soul. He mentions Gaston Bachelard and the idea that modern science can become, what was the word?
A spasmodic jump of Prometheus.
That's intense.
He says Prometheus uses usurped light, a torch that doesn't belong to nature, to try and even serve humanity. And because we're so afraid of our senses, we end up in this agnosticism of great abstractions. We look at language and math and only see empty signs with no connection to the outside world.
So we're just trapped in our own heads? Like narcissists?
Precisely. He says we're becoming solipsistic and atomized. We've lost the communication of souls that Hermes represents. He even says that without Hermes, Prometheus is dangerous, and that Narcissus and Dionysus are dangerous too.
So you need the mediator. You need the one who can hold both the madness of Dionysus and the ego of Prometheus.
Exactly. A god, like a child, should not remain alone when playing. He's quoting Nietzsche there. He's saying a healthy civilization needs more than one way to see the divine. It needs the tension.
It's interesting because he moves from this high-level philosophy straight into the history of how this actually happened. He starts chapter 3 by talking about the merging of myth and the mythical.
And he's very careful with his terms here. He defines myth as the big cosmic stories, the origins of everything, and the mythical as the stuff that stays in our world, like the legends of Faust or Tristan.
And the merging is the moment the god actually steps down from Olympus and enters our time and even space.
Yeah, the moment Hermes becomes Hermes Trismegistus. He's not just a god on a throne anymore, he's a figure in history.
And he's not alone in this. He mentions the Greeks naming him after the Egyptian god Thoth.
Right, the official blending happened around the 3rd century BCE. And check this out. He says the attributes start piling up. It's like a character level up in a game. One text says he invented writing and astronomy. Another says he taught navigation, water pumps, and even how to grow olives.
He's becoming a jack of all trades.
He's the patron of civilization, and he uses this to link the Egyptian priest to the Greek god. It's that deep fake we talked about earlier, rebranding a local deity into a universal sage.
But it's about more than the tools, is it? It's about the role. He's the scribe of the gods, the one who holds the secrets.
And that's why the Corpus Hermeticum is so powerful. The authors used his name to give their teachings a patina of antiquity. They wanted to tie their wisdom to a sacred, unbroken tradition.
A tradition that survives even when the gods themselves seem to have left the stage.
Okay, we're diving back into the thick of it. I've been staring at this section on the genealogies of the Triple Great, and honestly, my brain is starting to feel a little fragmented.
Join the club, Seth. It's like trying to trace a family tree where the branches keep turning into different people halfway through.
Exactly. That's precisely what Fivery's pointing out. He says it's difficult to say which Hermes we're talking about because they all seem to have children, and those children have their own versions of the story. It's a total mess of identities.
But he does find a way to anchor it, doesn't he? He says that even if the number of Hermeses fluctuates, the identity of Trismegistus inherently implies 3.
Right, the 3-headed or triple aspect. He connects it to this image of the free-faced Mercury tricephalos. And it's not a weird visual for the sake of it. He says it suggests he belongs to 3 realms, the heavenly, the earthly, and the infernal.
The crossroads. It makes sense. He's the god of the intersections. He even mentions this idea of a 3-pointed golden staff. It's like he's physically marking the spot where these different realities meet.
And look how he expands the 3 into everything. He starts pulling in alchemy. He mentions that some saw the 3 as the alchemical triad, salt, sulfur, and mercury. Or even the 3 kingdoms, mineral, vegetable, and animal.
It's like the number 3 is the glue holding the whole universe together in this text.
It really is. But then, and here's where it gets really wild, he shows how this triple identity starts getting used to claim all sorts of different lineages. He brings up this classic Hellenistic genealogy, Thoth, then his son Agaphodomon, then the second Hermes, and finally his son Tatsi.
Wait, so it's a literal chain of succession, like a relay race of wisdom?
Exactly, but then he immediately undercuts it. He says there is nothing more uncertain than divine genealogies. He brings in Cicero, who lists 5 different Mercuries. One is the son of sky and light, another is the son of Nile. It's just a list of possibilities.
It's like a mythological version of a choose-your-own-adventure book.
Pretty much. And then he brings in St. Augustine. Now, this is a great callback to what we discussed earlier about ephemerism. Augustine is the classic example here. He's looking at these Greek legends and saying, look, these weren't gods, they were just extraordinary men.
The historical human sage idea.
Yeah. He views Mercury as a descendant of Atlas, a man who was so great at medicine and law that people wanted to believe he was a god. He's basically doing the work of stripping the divinity away to find the human hero underneath.
But even Augustine can't escape the triple part. He mentions Mercury as the middle runner medius currens, because language acts as a mediator between people.
That's such a beautiful way to put it. It links the physical act of speaking to the cosmic function of the god. But even as Augustine tries to humanize him, the text shows how the Trismegistus title keeps pulling him back toward the divine.
It's like the identity is constantly being pulled between the earth and the Olympus.
Precisely. And he shows how this pattern just repeats and repeats through the centuries. He brings up this 12th century text that claims there were 3 Hermeses, Enoch, Noah, and the one who ruled Egypt after the flood.
So they're linking the Greek myths directly to the biblical foundations?
Every single one of them. They're trying to build this unbroken line of sacred wisdom, just like we talked about with the Prisca Theologia. They want to say that the wisdom of the Egyptians, the Greeks, and the Hebrews all comes from the same source.
It's a massive attempt at a universal truth. But it's also a massive game of, well, a deepfake, isn't it? Using a legendary name to give new ideas instant authority.
Exactly. Whether it's the Renaissance humanists or the 17th century alchemists, they are all using the triple great to bridge the gap between what we know and what we hope to discover. It's a constant, beautiful, and slightly chaotic process of remythologizing the world. It really is a dizzying cycle of reconstruction, isn't it?
Totally. Oh, wait, hang on. I hear someone at the door. The Korean food is here. Okay, we're back.
We're enough. I'm calling in from the home studio today. It's a bit quieter here than the main booth, which I actually appreciate.
A little sanctuary. It's a good vibe. Honestly, after that storm the other night, I think we all need a bit of a controlled environment.
Exactly. So, let's get back to the deepfake of the ancient world. We're looking at Antoine Fivera's analysis of how Hermes the Greek messenger jets this massive, heavy, author of all knowledge rebranding.
Right, because he's not running errands for Zeus anymore. Suddenly, he's the guy with the library.
Exactly. Look at this favor it coins to these wild numbers. He mentions Manetho reporting 36,525 books, and Seleucus claiming 20,000.
20,000? Okay, that's not a library, that's a database.
It's more like a mythological hoard. And the crazy part is, he's talking about more than philosophy. He quotes Clement of Alexandria, saying there were these specific roles in Egyptian service. You had a cantor who had to memorize 2 books of Hermes just to lead hymns.
So it was literally part of the liturgy. Like, don't forget your Hermes lyrics before the service starts.
Precisely. And then you have the astrology and metaphor books dedicated specifically to the planets. But it gets even more visceral. He mentions these pastophori, the people carrying images of the gods who had to know 6 other books.
And what were those about?
Medicine. Books on treating the body, organs, even questions concerning women.
So the divine messenger is also the cosmic doctor. It's all connected.
It is, and Fivre makes this really sharp point here. He says the sheer volume of these attributed books might actually be why he transitioned from a god to a historical person.
Wait, how so?
Think about it. If a god is just an Olympian, he's a character in a myth. But if a man leaves behind a massive organized library of medical, astronomical, and legal texts, he starts to look like a historical sage, an inventor, a founder. He gains weight in history.
He becomes a person you can actually track through the archives. That's a clever rebrand. Oh, someone's at the door.
That's probably the courier I was expecting. Hold on, Emily. Okay, I'm back. Just the usual delivery.
Did you get more ancient manuscripts?
Just some coffee and more research papers. But look, this leads right into the next part, which is even more cinematic. Favory talks about these scenarios, this idea of finding hidden wisdom in tombs.
Like a treasure hunt.
It's such a trope. He describes this ritual where people would go to a statue of Hermes in Achaia, place coins in its hand, and whisper prayers into its ear. Then, and this is the part that kills me, they'd walk straight to the market, open their ears, and interpret the very first word they heard as the god's direct answer.
No way! That is the most chaotic way to get an oracle. What should I have for lunch? Bread.
It's pure, beautiful madness. It blurs the line between a divine message and just random urban noise.
But that's the whole point of the deepfake, isn't it? The identity of the god and the sage becomes completely unstable.
Exactly. Favory shows how this spreads into the urban founder myth. There's this text, the Picatrix, describing a city called Adocentinus, built by Hermes. It has gates shaped like an eagle, a bull, a lion, and a dog. He even put speaking spirits in the gates.
So you can't even enter the city without a verbal waybill.
Exactly. And it's more than just cities. It's the discovery trope. The idea that someone, maybe an alchemist, maybe a traveler, stumbles upon a hidden chamber or a tomb.
Like the Book of Chests, he mentions.
Yeah. This beautiful scene where a narrator is lifted into the air, following the sun and moon, and suddenly finds himself looking at an old man in white robes. He asks, "Who are you?" And the answer is, "I am Hermes Trismegistus, and this book contains the secrets I hid from humanity."
So that every generation would have to seek them out.
That's the heart of it. The wisdom isn't lost, it's just waiting to be found.
Even if you have to dig through a few thousand attributed books to find it.
Okay, so I've been digging through this section where the legend stops being just a list of books and starts becoming a full-blown epic. It's like a first-person narrative.
Oh, I love a good memoir. Who's telling the story this time?
It's a character called Apollonius, and he starts off, well, pretty bleak. He says, "In my homeland, I was an orphan. I was destitute."
Oh, poor guy.
But he finds a statue of Hermes on a golden column, and the inscription is basically a challenge. It says, "I have displayed these wonderful signs openly, but now I have hidden them with my wisdom, so that no one can reach them unless they are as wise as I."
So it's a keep out sign for anyone without a PhD.
Exactly. But then there's a specific instruction on the statue's chest in Cyrillescom. It says, "Let him who wishes to know the secrets of creation and nature look beneath my foot."
Wait, so he looks under the foot?
He does. He says he was young and timid, but his spiritual nature grew strong enough to start digging. And he finds this underground chamber. But it's not a magical glowing room. It's pitch black, and there are these constant howling winds. He says he couldn't even light a torch.
That sounds terrifying. Just trapped in the dark with nothing but the wind.
He was literally tormented by frustration. He couldn't even sleep. But then, out of the dark, this man appears. He looks just like Apollonius.
A doppelganger?
Right? And this man tells him, "Place your light in a glass vessel." And then, this is the kicker. He says, "I am your own being, perfected and subtle."
Oh wow, that's deep. It's not an external god. It's a reflection of his own higher self.
It ties back perfectly to what we were saying about the deep fake nature of this figure. The discovery isn't about finding something outside of yourself. It's about uncovering a hidden layer of your own consciousness.
It's like a psychological ritual. He digs into the earth, which is the unconscious, and finds his own perfection.
Exactly. And when he finally enters the room with that light in the glass, he finds the legendary setup, an ancient man on a golden throne holding the emerald tablet.
There it is, the centerpiece, the secret of the world and the knowledge of nature.
But look how the text expands this. This isn't just one story. Favory shows how these new tales started blooming all over the Middle Ages. He mentions the Grail legends, the green as grass reliquary, and how scholars think the Grail might actually come from the Greek crater, the cup of Hermes.
So the Grail isn't just a cup, it's a symbol of this Hermetic essence being passed down.
Precisely. And it gets a little bit more wild with the timelines. He mentions this idea that the patriarchs Adam, Noah, Abraham had all this divine knowledge, but it was lost or corrupted by things like magic or war.
So it's a constant cycle of loss and rediscovery.
Yeah, and he brings up this massive, dizzying chain of authority. He lists names like Enoch, Abraham, Moses, Zoroaster, Pythagoras, Plato. It's like a spiritual LinkedIn for the ancient world.
It's a total who's who of the occult.
But notice how it shifts. By the Renaissance, it's about finding a marriage. He talks about the Hermetic Kabbalistic tradition, this massive fusion of the rediscovered Corpus Hermeticum and the Jewish Kabbalah.
The synthesis, bringing the Greek and the Hebrew together through the word.
Right. But here's the tension. While some were celebrating this synthesis, others were trying to clean it up. He mentions how some commentators actually cut out the more magical or scary parts of the texts, like the parts about magic statues that upset St. Augustine.
So they were trying to rebrand him again, making him more respectable, less, well, magical.
Exactly. They were turning the master of magic into a more polite Apollonian figure, a messenger of light and reason rather than this gritty, underground, earth-digging sage.
From the shadows of the tomb to the light of the academy. It's the same deep fake, just a more polished version.
All right, we're diving back into the heavy lifting. We left off with that incredible, almost hallucinogenic vision of the discovery of the hidden text. But now, the text gets, well, it gets a bit of a reality check.
Oh, here we go. The fun police are entering the chat.
Exactly. It's 1614, but deepfake is under investigation. A Protestant scholar named Isaac Hessobon comes along and basically does a forensic audit on these texts. And he proves they weren't written by an ancient sage sitting in a tomb. They were written in the early Christian era.
Ouch. That's a huge blow, right? If the ancient wisdom is actually just a few centuries old, the whole Prisca Theologia, the idea of this unbroken chain from Adam Just, snaps.
It should. Favory says some people were devastated. The authority was tied to the age. But, and this is the fascinating part, he says the disappointment was actually compensated for.
How? How do you recover from being told your sacred library is a recent forgery?
Because the vacancy was immediately filled by new, even more mysterious groups. He mentions the Rosicrucians and the rise of German theosophy. The energy didn't vanish, it just migrated.
So the vibe was more important than the date.
Precisely. Look at this. He gives this wild example from 1684. A guy named Kriegsmann writes this book claiming that Hermes Trismegistus is actually the founder of the German people. He links Hermes to Canaan, to Thoth, even to the very origins of Germany.
He's literally rewriting the national identity using Hermes as the branding agency.
It's a rebrand, and then it gets even more global. He brings in this Jesuit, Joachim Bouvet, who was writing to Leibniz about the I Ching.
The Chinese Book of Changes?
Yeah, and Bouvet is looking at this ancient Chinese text and saying, this is it. This is the wreckage of the most magnificent ancient philosophy. He claims the I Ching is a visual symbol invented by a genius like, you guessed it, Hermes Trismegistus, to represent the most abstract principles of science.
So he's connecting the Greek-Egyptian tradition to ancient China? He's saying they're all looking at the same shattered mirror?
Exactly. He even goes so far as to say that the I Ching is actually, well, it's Enoch, or Zoroaster, or Hermes. He's blurring all the lines. He says the system is a universal symbol for the highest intelligence.
It's like he's trying to find a single, universal source code for the entire human race.
And it doesn't stop with the scholars. He mentions this literary version in 1727 by Claude de Ramsay. It's this epic story about a character named Cyrus. He finds this second Hermes who was raised by a goat on a desert island.
A goat? Okay, we are definitely back in the mythological.
It's wild. But the point Ramsay is making is the same as the scholars. He's saying all these different mythologies, Egyptian, Persian, Greek, are just different names for the same ideas.
The polyphonic truth. The melody is the same, even if the instruments change.
But look, there's a darker, more modern side to this. Favre brings us back to the presence of Hermes in the city. He moves from these ancient legends to Mad Max.
Wait, what? Did I hear that right? Mad Max?
He really does. He says you find the spirit of Hermes in Intergy sections, in the fictional city of Edocentinus, in the streets of Amsterdam, in the film The Green Face, and even in George Miller's Mad Max, Beyond Thunderdome.
I mean, I guess a wasteland is the intersection of chaos and survival.
It's the liminal space. Hermes is the god of the crossroads, the middle link. He's the metacurrent, or the one who runs in the middle. He holds the balance between Apollo and Dionysus, between reason and inspiration, between history and myth.
It's not about the person, is it? It's about the function. The middleman who keeps the extremes from destroying each other.
Exactly. Whether he's a god in a tomb or a flicker of inspiration in a desert wasteland, his job is to be the catalyst. He's the one who makes the movement possible.
It's actually quite beautiful. Even when the history fails, the myth keeps running.
That's the enduring power of the deepfake. The truth might change, but the symbol is indestructible. My brain needs a second to untangle that last bit of symbolism.
Same. Let's take a quick breather and grab some water.
Okay, we're back. I'm dialing in for my study today, surrounded by far too many old manuscripts. But I'm glad to be here with you.
And I'm right here in the studio, feeling that post-ritual energy. It's actually a bit strange, Seth, because as we were getting ready, someone actually poked their head into the booth just to see if we were still recording.
A little unannounced guest to test our focus? That's very hermetic of them, a messenger appearing out of nowhere.
Exactly. Speaking of messengers, let's get back to the text. We were talking about how Hermes isn't just this static god on a throne. Favre is showing us this incredible, almost deep-fake metamorphosis, how he gets rebranded from a Greek deity into a master of the urban landscape.
Right, and he starts with this heavy hitter, a fragment from the Picatrix. It's an Arabic book of magic from the 10th century. Look at how he describes the city here. He says the fluidity of the city's dollars, like water and these shifting, moving colors, are attributes of Hermes.
It's like he's saying the very architecture of a city is a talisman. But then Seth, he makes this pivot. He says he wants to compare this to folk magic in an urban setting. Not the grand divine creation of a city, but Hermes inside the city.
Yeah, it's a shift from the macro to the micro. He moves from the god who found civilization to the god who inhabits the streets. And he uses Ronsard to show this the euphemism of Hermes. He describes him at a street corner, acting like a charlatan or a street performer, playing with cups and tricks.
That is such a huge drop in status. From divine architect to a guy running a magic trick at a market stall.
But it's a loss of dignity and a transformation into a psychological type. And then, and this is where it gets really trippy, brings in Gustav Meyrink. He talks about this novel, The Green Face, set in Amsterdam.
Oh, I love the imagery here. He describes this character, Chider Green, who is essentially a disguised and crucified Hermes. The book starts with a shop sign, Jokes and Pranks, Chider Green Salon.
It's so much more street than the Olympian version. And look at the way the protagonist, Halberisser, wanders through this labyrinth of canals and dark alleys. The city itself is acting like a living, breathing organism.
But wait, look at the description of Chider Green himself. He's a magician linked to Egypt, according to the author. He has this black headband, and there's this symbol of eternal life underneath. It mentions the scarab.
Right. So even in this modern, gritty, hallucinatory expressionist Amsterdam, the ancient roots are leaking through. He's also linked to Agasphere, a wandering figure. It's that bridge we talked about earlier between the Greek, the Egyptian, and even the Christian.
It's wild because the book claims that even when the god is hidden or disguised as a common prankster, the essence of the sacred remains.
Exactly. It's like the deepfake idea. The identity is being manipulated, but the underlying truth, the Prisca theologia, is still there, buried under the jokes and pranks.
But then the tone shifts again. It gets much darker. He moves from the colorful streets of Amsterdam to a place of absolute wasteland.
Yeah, he brings us to Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. This is the degenerated Hermes. He talks about Dr. Gloat, the master of ceremonies for these brutal gladiatorial fights.
It's so bleak. The Thunderdome is this transparent structure, and the man running it, Dr. Gloat, wears a black cloak like Dracula. He uses the magic of speech to turn something filthy into something demonically beautiful. He's
the fallen Hermes. He's not guiding souls. He's an auctioneer of violence. He's the distorted Mercury, a human who has usurped the role of the divine.
It's such a stark contrast to the liquid city of the Picatrix. Here, the city is built on scrap, waste, and the power of a tyrant.
But even here, the Hermetic fingerprints are everywhere. The way the characters use communication, the way the boundaries of the wasteland are blurred, it's all part of that same unstable identity. The messenger is still there, even if he's just an auctioneer in a post-apocalyptic desert. So, we were just talking about the distorted Mercury in Mad Max. But I want to pull us back for a second because Favre does something incredible with that character, Jedediah.
Right. He's literally stepping into the mythic shoes of Apollo stealing his cattle. It's like this cosmic recycling program is happening in the wasteland.
Exactly. And look at how specifically he links him to the transition from death to life. He says, Jedediah appears with a child and infant whose weapon looks like Eris's bow, and through him, the film reaches its full realization. This isn't just an action movie plot, it's a ritualistic restoration of society.
Which stands in such total opposition to Bartertown, doesn't it? That place was all about greed and brute force. Basically raw capitalism meeting totalitarianism.
Yeah, whereas the characters in the Citadel are trying to find their way back to a promised city. Even though they're wandering through ruins, there's this glimmer of a new civilization emerging under a galaxy of lights. But then, and here's where we need to be careful, Seth points out, Max himself isn't Hermes.
No. The role actually goes to Dr. Dirge, in that twisted form we discussed, and then to the trickster figure. It's more about movement than personhood.
Right? It moves between these four archetypal nodes of the god and the city. I mean, look at Type A. Hermes is the Urbis Conditor, the founder who manages the city from above and connects it to the cosmos. Like the Picatrix. There, the city is static, divine, even utopian. It's not moving toward us. It's already perfect because its symbols were divinely appropriated.
Which feels so different from what he says about Amsterdam Type B. That was all Kafkaesque. An expressionist labyrinth that would just crush your soul without Chider Green, to guide you through the masks and deceptions.
Yeah, but notice how those two types clash with Type C. This is my favorite part of his analysis. He brings up auditos from modern cinema. This Hermes isn't a builder or an urban guide. He's an exile. He's lost on the periphery in this limb-like space where there is no east or west.
But wait, that's actually the most hopeful part for me. Because Favre claims Auditos carries the most valuable and enough original message. He tells us our job is to find these hidden mythological presences right underneath the gray, boring suffering of our actual cities.
So we go from the grand architect to the wandering refugee. And then finally, Type D, the transition between the fall and redemption, using Bartertown as a warning, showing that if humanity forgets its mythic foundation, it can never truly restart civilization. It becomes stuck in perpetual decay.
Okay, so moving away from movies and back into the heavy stuff, the real historical documents, we're entering Chapter 5 now. Let's talk about the real iconography. Before people even rediscovered the Corpus Hermeticum, they were already painting him everywhere.
And it wasn't just one version. There was this massive distinction made early on between the alchemical Mercury, that frantic chemical agent, and Hermes Trismegistus himself, who appears much more, well, sage-like.
I love seeing those old manuscripts he describes. Like that piece from the late 13th century where St. Augustine actually accuses Hermes. He's basically calling him out for using magic formulas to animate statues.
Poor guy is caught in the middle of a theological beef, but look at how Favre uses these images to show the shift. In one miniature, you have Pythagoras or Isaiah watching Egyptian idols fall. These columns are crumbling because true prophecy has arrived. The old way is literally breaking apart under the weight of new truth.
Speaking of things being broken down, let's look at the alchemy side. Seth, did you see what he said about those four masters? It sounds like a recipe for madness.
Basically, you have Geber saying, grind, crush, and grind again without ceasing. Then Arnold of Villanova telling you to drink as much as possible, up to 12 times. And Races talking about drying it just as many times as you soaked it.
It's so visceral. It reminds me of our session with the handpan yesterday, that repetitive, rhythmic intensity needed to get into the flow.
Exactly. All that physical labor leads us to this beautiful image from the Aurora Consurgens. A figure holding his hands in that classic gesture, one finger pointing up, the other down. The literal visual shorthand for as above, so below.
Which brings us back to everything we started with today. Whether it's an alchemical manuscript or a sci-fi movie set in Sydney, the pattern stays the same. We are constantly looking for that hidden connection between the heavens and the streets we walk on every day.
Even if those streets look like ruins, there's still a messenger coming through. Okay, so we've gone from the gritty streets of Amsterdam and even a post-apocalyptic wasteland back into something much more formal. We're looking at actual Renaissance art now.
And it is so much more structured than those street performer versions of Hermes. But look, even in these grand paintings, there's this weird tension between him being an ancient sage and just a regular guy with some tools.
Exactly, he points to this painting by Giorgione. There's this figure who looks almost like St. John, but then he mentions X-ray analysis showed that the man on the right was originally wearing a feathered diadem, the kind you'd see on the Egyptian scribe Thoth.
So they were literally deep-faking his identity even back in the Renaissance, grubbing away the divine Egyptian roots to make him look like a simple astrologer or a Christian saint?
Precisely. It's that rebranding again. And check out this description of the Ambrosiana Gallery in Milan. They have a version where he has an armillary sphere and a pair of compasses under a table full of books.
I love the detail about how he identifies himself. Just one single word written over his head. Trismegistus. No long titles, no epic backstory, just the name itself floating there.
Right. It's all contained within a circle inscribed with a phrase from the 12th century. God is an intelligible sphere, whose center is everywhere and whose circumference is nowhere.
That sounds incredibly intense for a Tuesday afternoon. But wait, look at what happens next. He moves into these massive, colorful columns in the Vatican Library. Each column represents someone who invented an alphabet. Moses gets Hebrew, Mercury/Thoth gets Egyptian.
But here's the kicker. The figure representing Mercury Thoth isn't some ethereal spirit. He's wearing bright red boots, blue breeches, and a yellow cloak. He looked more like a character from a Renaissance parade than a cosmic deity. And look closely at his leg, there's actually a face covered in eyes painted on him.
Wait, what? A face made of eyes? Is that Argus Panoptes, like the giant hundred-eyed monster from Greek myth?
Yes. So even as they are trying to honor him as this divine inventor of writing, they're literally stitching other mythological monsters onto his body. It's such a chaotic visual mashup.
It really reinforces what you were saying about how much the identity fluctuates. One minute, he's a sage with ancient scrolls. The next, he's a brightly dressed messenger decorated with eyeballs.
And it doesn't stop there. By the 17th century, you start seeing these montages. Artists weren't even painting original scenes anymore. They were taking bits of one person, a bit of another, and slapping them together under a single title.
Which is basically just high-end historical Photoshop. They take Hermes here, Paracelsus there, Girolamo Cardano there, and suddenly you have this monumental image that never actually existed in real life.
Exactly. Even when an artist like Michael Mayer makes something beautiful showing Hermes pointing at the sun and moon, it's often part of this larger trend where everything becomes more schematic or symbolic rather than human. He starts losing those individual features we saw earlier.
So by the time we hit the 18th century, as Pfeiffer says, things get sparse. The vibrant energy dies down. All we find left from that era is this wooden panel from an apothecary in Innsbruck.
It's so quiet compared to what came before. Just 3 panels, Hermes holding his spear and scroll, flanked by Hippocrates and Asclepius. No eyeballs on legs, no street performers, just medicine and tradition.
I guess it's almost sad. Like the magic has been domesticated into something purely professional for doctors and pharmacists.
Maybe. But even then, look how he holds on to that one piece of truth, the first verse of the Emerald Tablet, written right there on a little scroll. They might change the clothes, they might swap out the gods, but they can't stop repeating the fundamental law. It's a lot to process. Let's take 5 while we deal with this sudden arrival at the door.
Oh, thank goodness. The Mexican food is finally here. Okay, I'm back.
Okay, we're back. I've got my coffee. I'm settled in at home today. It's actually a bit quiet here, which is a nice change from the chaos of the studio.
Enjoy the peace while it lasts. I'm still feeling that afterglow from the wind ritual the other night. It's like my skin is still vibrating.
Well, let's see if we can channel some of that vibration into this. We're looking at some heavy visual evidence now in Barbre's text. He's moving away from the theory and into the actual, well, the deep fakes of the ancient world. He's looking at ritual imagery.
Like how people actually performed the myth?
Exactly. Look at this first description. He's describing a Masonic ritual, the Memphis Magus. He says there are these side steps in the lodge called the highest philosopher of Hermes. And then get this. He describes an image of Hermes Trismegistus literally rising from a grave.
Wait, like a zombie?
Not quite a zombie, but he's emerging from the tomb. The text says the candidate is actually hidden in a coffin, and then a brother opens the lid from the inside and rises up, claiming to be Hermes.
That is intense. That's a full-on immersive experience.
It's wild, and he's more than some ghost. He's there to deliver the candidate from error and confusion. He claims to hold the secrets of nature, saying, "This science I, Hermes, taught the priests and kings of Egypt."
So he's claiming this direct lineage of power.
Right, but look how he handles the identity crisis. He says, "Remember me. My true name is Mercury to the Egyptians, Thoth to the Phrygians, Hermes Trismegistus to the Greeks, and throughout the earth, I am Hiram."
Wait, Hiram? As in the architect of Solomon's temple?
Exactly. This ties back to what we were discussing earlier about how these identities fluctuate. He's literally merging the Greek messenger, the Egyptian Thoth, and the Masonic legend of Hiram into one single multi-layered entity.
It's like a cosmic rebranding campaign. He's basically saying, I am every important legend you've ever heard.
It's great networking. But then the book gets even more fascinating and a little bit tragic. He mentions that the original manuscript of this Memphis Magus ritual was in French, held in a museum in Bayreuth. But it's lost.
Oh no, not lost. Not when it sounds that cool.
It was lost in 1978. We only know what it looked and looked like because of these German translations and reproductions. It's like looking at a blurry photo of a masterpiece.
But he's still tracing the visual trail, right? He's not stuck on the lost text.
No, he's finding them in unexpected places. He points to a 19th century drawing by a Kabbalist, von Meyer, where Hermes is just this massive bearded head. And then this is my favorite. He finds Hermes in a 1952 tarot deck. The Tibetan Tarot.
In 1950s tarot deck, calling a pillar Hermes is such a trip.
It really is. He finds this firm, a stone pillar, with a head at a crossroads in the imagery. It's this perfect collision of the Greek deity, the Egyptian sage, and even Tibetan influences. It shows that this brand of Hermes never really died. It just kept absorbing new cultures like a sponge.
It's like the character is too big to ever truly disappear. He just changes his outfit.
Precisely. He's moving from a god to a symbol, to a piece of art, to a way to navigate the world. But then we hit the heavy history, chapter 6. He starts tracing the actual timeline, the historical and bibliographic milestones.
Back to the scholar side of you then?
I can't help it. He's laying out the lineage. He notes that most of the Greek Hermetica were actually written in Alexandria or the Nile Delta during the early Christian era.
So they weren't even ancient in the way people thought?
No, this is the big reveal. For centuries, people thought these texts were as old as Moses. But the text says the Corpus Hermeticum was largely lost during the Middle Ages. It only resurfaced during the Renaissance, specifically in 1460, when a monk named Leonardo da Pistoia brought a Greek manuscript to Florence.
So the ancient wisdom everyone was obsessed with was actually a new discovery for the Renaissance?
Precisely. It was a massive historical rediscovery that fueled the entire movement. It wasn't just finding old books, it was finding a lost connection to the divine.
It's like finding a lost piece of your own identity and pretending you've always known it was there.
That actually explains a lot about the Renaissance, doesn't it? Okay, so we've moved past the zombie ritual and the 1950s tarot. Now, Faber is he's getting incredibly granular. He's basically providing a bibliographic map of every time someone tried to print, translate, or argue about Hermes.
Oh boy, are we entering list mode? Because I'll be honest, my brain might start drifting toward my yoga flow if we just read a bibliography.
I promise I won't just read a list, but look, there's a pattern here. He's tracing how the Corpus Hermeticum traveled. He mentions how, in the 16th century, this whole Hermetic movement was actually struggling to survive in certain places. He specifically points to England and Germany.
Wait, didn't you say earlier that the brand was absorbing everything, like a sponge?
Right, but the sponge was being squeezed. He says that in England, both Puritanism and the Latin Catholic policies were basically saying, no thanks, we don't want your magic. And in Germany, he notes that Lutheranism actually delayed the spread of humanism.
So the newly discovered ancient wisdom couldn't actually get a foothold in the most influential parts of Europe?
Exactly, it was being blocked by religious gatekeepers. But, and here's the cool part, he says that even though the Corpus Hermeticum itself wasn't penetrating Germany, other esoteric currents stepped in to fill the void. We're talking Paracelsianism, Rosicrucianism, Theosophy.
So the Hermes brand was actually being replaced by these other, more localized software updates?
Precisely. He even notes that German Theosophy almost never mentions Hermes Trismegistus. They were doing their own thing, building their own systems of magic without the original Greek-Egyptian star player.
That's wild. It's like the original influencer lost their contract in that region, so everyone just started following these new local accounts.
That's a great way to put it. But then, the 17th century hits, and we see this massive explosion of, well, the deep-fake version of history becomes the mastermind version. He starts listing these massive, sprawling works. He mentions this Italian Franciscan, Hannibal Rosselli, who produced a 6-volume commentary on Hermes.
6 volumes? That is not a light read for a weekend.
No, it's a library, and it leads us to the most important plot twist in the whole book. We have to talk about Isaac Casaubon.
The man who broke the myth?
The man who broke the myth. In 1614, Casaubon, a Protestant scholar, proved that these texts cannot be as old as people thought. He uses linguistic analysis to show they date back to the early Christian era, not the time of Moses.
Oh man. That's the moment that ancient magic becomes recent history. That must have been devastating for all the people who built their entire spiritual identity on this ancient lineage.
It was a total collapse of the Prisca Theologia, the idea of a primordial theology that had been passed down unbroken. Suddenly, the hidden wisdom wasn't hidden, it was just relatively recent.
So the deepfake was exposed. The ancient sage was actually a product of a much later era.
And yet, look at what happens next in the text. He says that even after Casaubon's revelation, people still didn't stop. They just started using Hermes to blend everything else together. He calls it a synergy of Egyptomania, Kabbalism, and alchemy.
So even if the history was debunked, the vibe was too strong to kill.
Exactly. By the 18th and 19th centuries, Hermes becomes this massive, swirling cocktail of different traditions. He's appearing in English, in Dutch, in American journals like The Dial. He's being pulled into the hands of the Theosophical Society.
It's like the character survived the fact check by becoming a symbol instead of a historical person.
He transitioned from a truth to a truth hue. He went from being a person you study to a language you use to talk about the universe.
It makes me wonder, if we're doing the same thing today, are we just creating new deepfakes of ancient wisdom to make our modern lives feel more connected?
That is a question we might need to sit with for a moment. Okay, so we've gone from the zombie rituals to the massive heavy-duty scholarship. We're officially in the deep end of the bibliography now.
Seriously, Seth? I thought we were just walking through a museum, but now it feels like you're handed me a spreadsheet of every library in Europe.
I know, it's a lot. But look, even in this list of names and dates, there's this beautiful, intense energy. He starts by mentioning Gerard van Moorsel. He's talking about a phenomenological study from 1955 specifically about how the Corpus Hermeticum and the Asclepius actually perform this spiritualization process.
So it's about more than reading the words. It's about how the text changes the person reading it?
Exactly. It's about the movement from the physical to the spiritual, and he follows that up with J.R. Reichenborg, who's looking at Egyptian gnosis in action. It's all about how this ancient wisdom actually works on the human soul.
It's like the difference between reading a manual on breathing and actually taking a deep pranayama breath. One is information, the other is transformation.
That's a perfect way to put it. But then, he pulls us back to the real heavyweight of the academic world. He says that while we can't forget the older scholars, the true scientific study of the Corpus Hermeticum really begins with Richard Reichenbach in 1904. He was the first one to approach these texts with full scientific rigor.
So the magic finally met the microscope.
Pretty much. But even as science stepped in, the esoteric side was still pushing back. He notes that in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, all this occult interest actually fueled the scientific research. It was a feedback loop.
That's so interesting. The fringe was actually driving the mainstream to look closer.
Yeah, and then he brings up the absolute titan of this era, Walter Scott. He describes Scott's 4-volume edition from the 1920s as a monumental work that is by no means outdated. He even mentions a specific volume, Volume 4, that is unsurpassed in its study of testimonia.
Unsurpassed? That's a big claim.
It is. He's saying that if you want to know every time Hermes was mentioned in a non-Hermetic text, Scott is still the king.
It's like a deep dive into the citations. Then look at this. He starts listing all these different cultural intersections. He mentioned Jean-Pierre Mahé, looking at Hermes in Upper Egypt and the Nag Hammadi texts.
Right, so we're back to that sponge idea. We have the Egyptian context, we have the Latin context, and then this is where it gets really sprawling. He lists works on the Hermeticism of the Renaissance in Italy, in France, even in the English magical poems of Robert Burton.
It's everywhere. It's like a scent that lingers in every room of history.
And it's one way. He's showing how it flows into everything, into the works of Giordano Bruno, into the mystic traditions of the Renaissance, even into the shadowy side the debates about magic and witchcraft in the eyes of the church.
You know, looking at this massive web of names, it makes me think about what we were saying earlier about the deepfake.
How so?
All these scholars, all these books, all these different cultures, they're all trying to piece together a single truth from fragments. They're all participating in the same rebranding that Hermes did. They're all trying to find the hidden meaning, subcortice under the bark.
You know, looking at this bibliography, it's more than a list of books. It's a map of the human attempt to never let the light go out. Even when the history was debunked, the search for the truth stayed alive.
The myth didn't die, it just found new ways to be told.
You know, looking back at everything we've traced, from those first chaotic, many-eyed images of Hermes to the cold, hard linguistic reality uncovered by Casaubon, it's a profound journey. We started looking for a person, but we ended up finding a pattern of how humanity clings to the idea of a primordial truth, even when the historical ground shifts beneath our feet.
It's been such a whirlwind. We've seen Hermes as a god, a zombie, a piece of Renaissance, Photoshop, and finally, as a symbol that lives in the very way we study the past. It's not about the dates being right or wrong, it's about the fact that we keep looking. We keep trying to find that connection to something older, something more permanent.
Exactly. Faber's work has shown us that while the ancient credentials might have been a beautiful fiction, the spirit of the Hermetic tradition that drive to find the universal law hidden under the bark is undeniably real. The deep fake might have been exposed, but the essence survived the fact check.
I think that's a beautiful note to end on. Even when the wind blows the masks away, the energy remains. I'm feeling that stillness now, even after all that historical turbulence we've navigated together.
Well, I'm certainly feeling the weight of all those bibliographies, but it's a weight worth carrying. It's been an absolute privilege to walk through these layers of myth and history with you, Emily.
And with all of you listening, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the many faces of Hermes.
Until next time, keep looking beneath the surface. And remember, even when the lights go out on the history books, the search continues.
Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye.